I'm often asked how much space you need to raise your pigs. Pigs can be kept in small spaces or large spaces humanely, but if you're going to keep them in small spaces, you need to know how to do it. And if you're going to raise pasture pigs, you'll want a pen like this to train them to the electric fence. That's why I think this pen design is the best if you're going to keep pigs in a small space. I'm Rob from Dowdle Family Farms, and we raise hundreds of pigs on our farm on pasture. We strive to give our pigs great lives while providing some of the most nutritious, highest quality pork that we can. And in this video, I'm going to show you how you can raise pigs to produce similar results in a small pen while keeping the pigs healthy, happy, and produce some outstanding pork. First, let's discuss two problems often associated with keeping pigs in small spaces, and then we'll look at how to design a pen and the maintenance required to keep it clean. The two problems with keeping pigs in small spaces are their sanitary conditions and boredom. Let's start with the sanitary conditions. Despite what people claim, pigs don't just naturally stink. Yes, their manure stinks, just as cow manure stinks, and so do people's. But the stench comes in when they're kept in small, confined spaces that stay wet and there's nothing to absorb the nutrients. When everything stays wet, the manure becomes anaerobic and the stench is horrible. To mitigate this, we add dry bedding materials that soak up the moisture, but also soak up the nitrogen in their manure, much like a compost pile. Bedding include things like wood chips, pine needles, straw, hay, wood shavings, leaves, and many others. We'll come back to the best ones when we talk about managing the pen. But the second issue with keeping pigs in smaller spaces is their boredom. Pigs are smart creatures and they are always looking for something new to do and to explore. They can easily become stressed without something to keep their minds occupied, and this can have an impact on the quality of the meat because of the stress. To resolve both of these issues, we'll design a deep bedding style pen for pigs where we keep adding materials to the pen in order to keep the pigs interested and to absorb the nutrients, the manure, and the moisture in the pen. So let's start by looking at the pen design. I'd suggest creating a square pen out of cattle panels. I'd use at least 8 panels with 2 pigs. That's 2 panels on each side. I use sheep and goat panels because I wean my pigs and I'm looking for smaller size holes, like 4 inches by 4 inches. Cattle panels have 6 by 8 inch holes, which is fine for a weaned pig that's 40 to 60 pounds. So if you use 2 panels on each side of the pen and make a square, you'll have roughly 1,000 square feet. You'll want to use T-post or some kind of post on each end and in the middle of the panel to support it. You'll need about 20 to 25 T-posts. Drive the T-post into the ground and use some tie wire to fasten the panels to the post. I highly recommend getting a small electric fence charger and running a strand along the inside of the pen to do this. First, it trains them to the electric fence if you're going to put them on pasture, but second, it keeps them from pushing against the fence to scratch, root, or to get out. Now, before we turn to the management of the pen, let's quickly address how to keep your pigs. They'll need water, food, and shelter. Depending on the time of the year, the shelter may be as simple as shade like ours, but it could be as complex as a dog house or even an IBC tote turned on its side with a hole punched in the top. Pigs tend to handle warm weather and they need mud and water, and they handle cold weather well, but they don't handle both cold and wet conditions, especially when it's windy. So they'll need to get out of the wind and the cold in cold climates. In terms of food and water, they'll need a container, preferably a big one that they cannot get into for their water. I use a 50-gallon livestock tank and run an electric wire across the top of it. You can use a board, but they will eventually tear it up. I also highly recommend that you feed them by hand twice a day until they get used to you feeding them. They'll get comfortable with you much faster and it makes managing so much easier. You want them to come when you call them, and that's when they get out, they will easily come to you. Now let's turn to managing the deep bedding system. You will need to cover the floor of the pen with a lot of carbon-based materials when you first get the pigs. They'll probably poop in one spot depending on the size of the pen and how many pigs, and then every week or two, maybe sooner if it rains a lot, you'll want to add more carbon-based materials in the pen. Dry leaves work really well in dry weather, and you can rake them from your yard or pick them up from the side of the road already bagged. That's why I like raising pigs in the fall. It's a great time to get them. Now, also in my area, we have lots of oak trees, and the bags of leaves often have tons of acorns for the pigs to eat. They love the acorns. It makes great meat, and it reduces feed costs. Now, pine straw is good because it doesn't compact as much as leaves when it gets wet and allows for aeration. My favorite is probably wood chips when I can get them. They tend to be larger and allow for a lot of variation because, like the pine straw, it doesn't form a mat that messes with water penetration. Now, if you get a lot of rain when the pig is wet, you can get 2 or 3 bales of pine shavings. Don't use cedar because those flakes don't compose very well. But all these flakes dried up pretty well, and they work really great with pine straw or wood chips. Now, think about it this way. Some materials absorb moisture better, but they tend to form a mat which keeps the air from flowing in very well. These are things like leaves, hay, and pine shavings, sawdust, and many others. You can even use strips of cardboard as long as they don't have plastic in them or that glossy coating of ink on them. Pigs will also help tear them up. I've even used paper feed bags for my pigs. Now, the second class of stuff is stuff that has some structure. It doesn't decompose very rapidly, and it allows air in and the pile to start decomposing as well. This is where the wood chips and the pine straw come in. Pine straw has that little waxy coating on it, and the wood chips are so large they don't decompose very well quickly, and they allow the air in.
While I was recording the video, I forgot to mention that the very first time you put pigs in your pen, you may need to put a level of 2 to 3 to 4 inches deep of carbon-based materials, hay, straw, pine straw, that kind of stuff in the pen to help absorb the urine and all. If it's just bare ground, then the pigs oftentimes will make a mess and it'll create some problems. It usually won't take as much materials after you put it in.
Now, the pigs will really enjoy rooting in most of the stuff that you drop in the pen. We don't even spread it. We dump it in the pen. They explore it, chew it, root in it, push in it, and find other stuff to eat. It does make a huge difference in their lives, and they love it because it meets this exploring need that they have. I've kept over 20 pigs in this 4,000 square foot pen, and it worked well as long as I kept adding bedding for the pigs. Depending on the level of nerve that you have, you can let the pigs out in a large fenced-in backyard or larger pasture for a few hours as long as they are used to coming to you. I would not do it in an unfenced area just because pigs don't respect property boundaries very well. Then you can feed them that night and put them up in the pen. Now, of course, any fruits and veggies that you have can be given to the pigs to increase the variety of their diets and increase the quality of the pork. While I don't keep most of my pigs in a pen like this long term, I have done it on a larger scale with larger pigs, and it worked quite well. Of course, you can feed any excess fruits and vegetables that you have to your pigs, and it'll increase the variety of feeds in their diets, and it'll also increase the quality of the pork. Now, I don't keep most of my pigs in a pen like this long term. I have done it on a larger scale with larger pigs, and it worked quite well. You just have to be intentional about managing their bedding in their pen. If you got some value out of this video, you could do me a huge favor by sharing it with others that you think will like it as well. It'll help the channel grow. It'll help more people learn how to raise pigs in a good way while raising their own food. In the next video, we're going to start talking about raising pigs on pasture. Until then, I hope you have a great day. Take care, and we'll see you next time.